Hi everyone, Daniel here, the creator of the relationship model of addiction. Well, we've been covering the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, or I don't know, several months, the stages of recovery. And what we were talking about, just a quick review, is that in stage 1 of recovery, you're breaking up with the means of relief, and you're heading into stage 2 of recovery, and you're replacing that relationship with the means of relief with the relationship with yourself. What does that mean? What does having a relationship with yourself mean? It means your self begins with awareness, and you become aware of what you're experiencing at any given point in time, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're wanting, whatever your experience is, so you know what that is and you could express that. So when you have a relationship with yourself, you can act in a way that's consistent with your truth, operate in your own interests based on what you know is best for you. And you could also express yourself and represent yourself accurately and say, have a presence and say whatever it is and express whatever it is that you're aware of experiencing. And we also talked about what having a relationship with yourself means ultimately is that your action and your communication is consistent, comes from your awareness of your experience. Last couple of weeks we were talking about discernment, and discernment is an attribute of awareness. It's refined awareness. And last week what we were talking about, I'm going to be continuing from last week, where we were talking about discerning between whether you are self-centered or other-centered in your relating, and we were talking about discerning between whether the person you're with is self-centered or other-centered when they're responding to you. So I happen to have this week, I've been reading my close friend Neil Colbrin. He's also a colleague. He's a tremendous therapist and psychologist, and he wrote this book, Emotional Well-Being. Right here it is, Emotional Well-Being, the Gift of Life. And I'm going to be reading from it and referring to it because I found that some of the content in the book really is exactly very similar, exactly overlaps with what I've been talking about discernment, about having a relationship with yourself, about discerning between whether you are self-centered or the other person's, whether you're self-centered or other-centered, or whether the other person is coming at you self-centered or other-centered. And he really talks a lot about that in this book, coming from a little different perspective, but there's so much overlap. I just wanted to share some of this with you because when I was reading it, as I will to you, I wasn't sure if it was his voice or my voice. It's like we're very close friends, but it was almost coming from the same place. So let me check that. I want to bear with me here. Let me read to you. Can I read to you from his book? And this pertains to all of what I've been talking about regarding the relationship with yourself. Okay? And then we're going to get to discernment in a minute. So got to get my eyes on here. Tell me whether this sounds familiar to you, whether you heard this before. And so he's talking about emotional dependence and needing for external validation. And then by needing external validation, you heard me talk about week after week after week about when being other-centered is when your well-being and sense of self-worth is based on external, on something is externally based. Okay, so here he talks about internal validation is the ability of an individual to validate themselves or to confirm, quote, confirm, approve, authenticate, substantiate, or ascertain the truth internally from within. It is the ability to know without needing approval or confirmation from the outside world. In essence, it is the process of approving of oneself, and it is the essential ingredient of high self-esteem. It is self-love. It is the experience of knowing that you are okay without needing an external factor to make you feel okay, be it a job, a relationship, social status, education level, or material possession. possessions. It's the quintessential process that promotes emotional well-being and contributes to the equanimity, the emotional state of calmness, stability, and composure, even in the face of tension or stress. Okay, so that's what he had to say about the relationship with yourself. Then, a few pages later, he talks about, he tells a story about, he calls it, the story is the pink couch. And basically, it's a story of when he first got married. And this was, I don't know, 20 plus years ago. And he bought a house with his new wife and had no money and wanted to buy some furnishings. So he was at this place, at this liquidation sale or someplace where they were selling furniture, and he sees this big pink couch sectional that at first glance he was really into it. It's kind of impulsive. He said he loves it. So he turns to his wife and asks her, well, what do you think? Is it nice? Because he's really, she could see the excitement in his eyes. And she says, yeah, it's nice. So he goes ahead, he proceeds to buy it. This is, right at the cash register. He pays for it, gets it shipped to his house. When it's at his house and it's finally there, shipped, when he sees it in his house, all of a sudden he hates it. He wants nothing to do with it. He wants to get rid of it. And he turns to his wife and he says, I hate this couch. And she says, I knew it. I knew it. And when she says she knew it, he was a little irate. He goes, what do you mean you knew it? And she said, well, I saw how happy you were and I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't want to upset you. So I said it was okay, but I knew and I could see it now. So he then had this talk with her where that moment he was discerning that she was externally based, and that her well-being was based, her need for validation was based on making him happy and not really saying what she's feeling. She was coming from other-centered. So at that point, they came up with an agreement to not do that and establish that each one's experience as equal, and that he wants her to express whatever her truth is at the moment and not suppress it or twist it or shape it so that it makes him happy, or just it's not expressing herself. It's considering his feelings and his experience before her own. He doesn't want that. He wants to be in a relationship with a separate autonomous entity who could represent herself accurately and honestly and truly, and then from there we'll see where it goes. Just one additional piece to this story, which was really incredible and uncanny in terms of all the stuff that we're talking about, is that shortly after this experience, he shares about he was leading a couples workshop in the Midwest, and he was telling this story about the pink couch. And he was finding that the general consensus in this group in the Midwest was that people were really incredulous, that how could he want his wife to say that it was an ugly couch when it would shame him. So the consensus in the group was that they would have bought the ugly couch so as not to shame their partner, every one of them. So this business about self-centeredness and being other-centered is not just what happens when you're addicted and in recovery. I think that being other-centered is something that is family and familially and socially conditioned to not think of ourselves, but always defer to someone else. So that is a level of discernment that we're talking about. Okay, discerning whether the person that you're with is coming from their self, or they're deferring to you, or they're being other-centered. So practice this. What I suggest you do is go out today or this week. If you resonate with this, if you get this, go talk to someone about the difference between whether they discern, whether it matters to them, or whether they discern between self-centeredness and other-centeredness. Okay? So until we meet again next week, the quality of our relationships is the quality of our life.